Welcome back. It's definitely no secret that we in Copenhagen Fintech have been very inspired by what is happening in Asia and how they are leading the fintech movement, as you just saw from Chris Crespo. We see huge opportunities in India, Singapore, China, Japan, Indonesia, and the list goes on. The next moderator I've previously met in Mumbai. AJ is a seasoned executive with 15 years of experience in setting up, operating, and growing businesses across diverse geographies such as East Africa, Canada, India, and Vietnam. Currently, co-founder and CEO of startup Réseau, AJ has been very active in the Indian startup ecosystem for the past 8 years and has built India's top startup accelerator. Much more can be said, but I will actually leave that up to you, AJ. So take it away and introduce your panel. Thank you so much for joining, everyone. Good to see you.
Okay, so I think we need to do this once more. So I think we started much before time. So I think we're finally on. Hi, everyone. My name is Ajay Ramasubramaniam, co-founder and CEO of startup Réseau. I'm based out of Mumbai in India. I have with me 3 wonderful panelists. Before we get on to them, it's a wonderful day to be talking about fintech opportunities and challenges in Asia and Oceania in the global sustainability track, given that today, 16th of September, is the International Ozone Day. We have had some good preceding panels talking about financial services in 2030. Will Asia be leading the way? We have heard our fellow speakers talk about super apps, open banking, how distribution models are leading the way in how banking and financial services are done in South and Southeast Asia. So with that, I'd like to welcome our 3 panelists for the day. We have with us Stephanie from DBS Bank, Ivan from Saxo Markets, and Suramya, who is a venture investor based out of Singapore, donning several hats. So before we get into the Q&A part of it, I'd like our fellow panelists to briefly introduce themselves. We can start with Stephanie, going on to Ivan, and then Suramya. Over to you, Stephanie.
Thanks a lot for the introduction. So my name is Stephanie Chu. I work at DBS Bank. I look after fintech and partnerships in the innovation group. And for those of you that don't know who DBS is, we're a financial services company based in Singapore, so headquartered in Singapore and listed in Singapore, and also present in 18 markets. And we offer the full suite of banking services across those markets for corporate and for consumer. The consumer side. And so it's a pleasure being here amidst this panel, and as well as for the main topic of sustainability, because this is a key focus for us this year when it comes to fintech engagements. And we're a proud regional partner for the Copenhagen Fintech UNDP Global Impact Partnership as well. So we can't wait to see what comes out of that. Thanks.
Saxo Markets. I am based in Singapore. Work with banking.
Ivan, I don't think you're clearly audible.
Better? Better?
Sure, go for it.
I'll speak a little bit louder. So I was saying that I represent Saxo Markets, which is a digital brokerage in terms of investments and trading facility provider. We are headquartered
Please
in Copenhagen,
turn on your microphone.
and I'm based in Singapore after the advanced solution market in Asia. And we work with banks, brokers, health providers, fintech partners to deliver any customer experience when it comes to this.
Sure, let me go then. Hi, everyone. I represent a boutique fund management firm in Singapore called CapitalSG, prior to which I was a fund manager at SoftBank Investments for many years, prior to which I was an investment banker with Merrill Lynch. At CapitalSG, we run a few different investment mandates, largely focused on fintech in Asia. And we do a lot of work with the large global DFIs and impact investors. So again, sustainability, fintech, and connecting the European Nordic ecosystem with Asia is all quite close to what we do. So happy to be here today for our discussion.
Sorry, this is just Thomas from Copenhagen here. Ivan, there
Very
seems
cool.
to be an issue with your...
So it would have been great doing this in Copenhagen, but we are all virtual, and that's allowing us to reach a wider audience, I presume.
What?
So we can jump in straight into the questions. So before we get into talking about the opportunities and the challenges that are out there for fintechs, how about talking about the major issues that are plaguing the financial services industry that can be adopted or that can be solved by adopting a tech first or a digital first approach? So maybe Stephanie, you want to go for that as someone coming from bank?
Sure. I think the first challenge that we're facing is definitely COVID. I know it sounds so cliche to say this, but if anything, it's allowed everyone to really appreciate and accelerate the digitalization. But in essence, when we look at digital first, or digital soon, it is really about aiming to make the place a better world and a much more connected world. So I feel that, first of all, if you look at the customer segment, we're definitely looking at the unbanked or the underbanked, at serving them. We're also looking at supporting the SMEs a lot more, especially in these difficult times. And so by being digital first or a bit more digital, we're allowing ourselves to reach out and cast our network a little bit wider. And then, of course, we cannot do without millennials. But millennials are a whole other ballgame, except especially for banks, because there is. It's weird because banks are supposed to bring you trust, and so millennials don't believe in the same kind of trust that others do. So that's why all these digital banks are doing so well in that space. So then for us, the other challenge are the virtual banks, especially in Asia. We've seen it a lot in Hong Kong and in Singapore. And so then the urgency would be more around the personalized experiences. When we talk about use cases, it's really about giving the power to the users and the consumers and the clients to be able to dictate their journey, their financial journey. And that's where the digital space is so important. The other part is obviously automating a lot of processes, whether it's mostly internally or also for our customers. It's just to up the performance, on speed, on lead time, and also to make some of those experiences like KYC a lot more seamless, especially when it comes to alternative lending or account opening, among others. And of course, let's not talk about investment, which I'm sure Ivan can talk a lot more about. So that's my view.
Awesome. So Ivan, your take on that?
Yeah, well, there's certainly a driver that COVID-19 presents in terms of providing investment space. We are working with what...
Ivan, Thomas from Copenhagen here. You need to turn up your mic a bit. We can hardly hear you.
Financial advice, whether it be family financial planning, investments, they all challenging time, not be able to be physically meet on Zoom, but so providing them with a toolkit.
You have to turn up your volume.
Allows them to engage more effectively with investments is suddenly becoming much more. And there are many players out there who are looking at that, and they are looking to connect with our eyes. So we are very much in line with working with several startups who are interested in providing such services. We have been in conversations with
Ivan, I think your mic is not doing justice to what you're talking. Yeah, it's kind of on and off.
Okay, I'm not sure why.
Yeah.
It's almost right at it.
Yeah, it's now better. It's now much better. Yeah.
So I'm gonna stay at this. I'm gonna stay at this level.
Sure.
How it is. So I was saying that yes, we are working with a community that is collaborative between large banks, large asset management firms that require these technology sets, as well as in connectivity with fintech firms, because they are the ones coming with great ideas as to how to engage financial advisors and their customers better. And having an open ecosystem is what we're seeing right now. The main challenge here is, of course, that as previous keynote speaker was talking about, the regulatory landscape and also the division between the different financial regimes across Asia is very diverse. So
Sure.
solving it for one country doesn't necessarily mean that solving it for another. But therein lies both the challenge and the opportunity. So there are many eyes, there are many companies looking to work across geographical expanse in Asia, and there's certainly a lot of opportunities out there to digitalize service, because look, to reach, as Stephanie says, to reach the underserved, now it's a great time. Everyone has connectivity. Everyone from any part of Asia should be able to access the same types of services, as long as there's a good combination between technology and regulation.
So Ramya?
Yeah, so I would almost, just to supplement to what Stephanie and Ivan said, I think for banks, it's actually a very tricky position that they are in right now. I would almost say they're caught between a rock and a hard place. Because if you look at, COVID plus the global macros, interest rates globally at zero, banks are having to really, really focus on their core competence, try to minimize sort of excessive costs, and also try to focus on customer segments and businesses that actually generate high ROE. Given global macros, this is not the time for banks to be excessively generous and be investing in businesses that won't make money. But at the same time, we are in a position where regulators, governments are keen to spread financial inclusion, ensure that excluded populations also get access to payment systems, credit, etc. And also socially, given the sentiments you can feel on the ground globally, it's not acceptable in society any longer for a small segment of the society to have access to certain financial services that are not spread out to a wider segment. So for banks at the moment, it's not that easy themselves to say expand and set up a branch in every small town in Asia, or try to offer low cost payment services to customers where it'll be hard to even justify the return on the digital device required. Which is where we're seeing fintech companies come and start playing a role. I think in the past, there was a view that fintechs will replace bank, and sort of there's a competition between banks versus fintechs. I think we're now in an interesting position where banks realize that maybe partnership with fintechs will allow them to play in these spaces without having to set up bank grade compliance and sort of IT systems. And fintechs hopefully have realized that banks do come with a lot of capabilities, infrastructure, systems, which you can't completely sort of replicate or bypass with sort of 5 people sitting in a room. So I think these two industries are going to move together. It's an interesting position where we are in socially right now.
Great. So I think we're like fairly short on time, so I'm going to try and quickly run through a couple of questions that we discussed yesterday. So Stephanie, I mean, DBS has been one of the older, or as a bank has been operating one of the older open innovation programs and startup related programs. How are the bank and fintech partnerships realizing value for DBS in Asia?
Yeah, that's a great question. Actually, the other day I read this article in Forbes that was saying that fintech and bank partnerships are a fad, and it's over. It's not scalable. So one of the main reasons was because of the bank structure, and this is why I appreciate what Ramya was saying, because it really depends on the banks. So for us, we hope that we are putting a separate stream or a separate channel for those partnerships to be happening. But I think the core types of values that we can derive from partnerships are essentially these, so it's like making a positive impact on the world. And I cannot insist on this too much because I know it sounds a little bit cliched, but it is true, right? Ultimately, you want to make the world a better place. Then when we look at customer acquisition, it's looking at the shared acquisition. There's a lot of argument out there saying that banks have the scale and the brand alignment, and then the fintechs will benefit from that. It's not the case anymore. It's probably the other way around in a lot of times. So that's why it's looking at how can we combine our efforts together for that. And of course, this translates into hopefully revenue as well, right? So shared revenue or revenue more skewed to one side. But in any case, when it comes to DBS, it is really about ensuring that the startup ecosystem grows and that we're here to help that. So there are a few different types of modes of engagement that we know of. Of course, the classic one is investments, like CVCs, corporate venture capitals are one, and Suramya has a lot of experience in that. We also look at collaborations. So this is more like ecosystem partnerships. So to disrupt and amplify some of the efforts in the customer journey. The third one would be cost sharing models. And this could be done through collaborations as well. And then one that my team handles, especially, are proof of concepts that hopefully lead to deployments. So that's a good way to experiment together. And then the most basic one is sharing of knowledge. And this we sometimes do through mentorship and so on. And so when we talk about, open banking and open innovation platforms, we obviously have our open APIs available. We also look at other platforms, like in Singapore, we have Apex that's been run by AFIN, and I think it's a fantastic platform. So those are some examples. And of course, any kind of ecosystem council that's being set up in a bank helps with planning the strategy.
Cool. Yeah. I'll quickly move on to Ivan with the next one. So Saxo is known to be a market leader innovating in financial markets. And if you were to list down 5 broad areas within financial markets, like core infrastructure, the post-trade digitization, AI and analytics, investment technology, and alternative trading, which would be the top 2 areas of focus in terms of innovation over the next 12 to 18 months?
Yeah, I think in terms of the front ends, whether it's API, whether it's interface, whether it's alternative platforms, that's a well-traversed path. There are many providers in the space, us inclusive, and that is always going to be amorphous. In terms of, as long as the client demands certain kinds of user interactions, you're going to have the platform to build it. So I think that in natural cycle or in its natural growth path, that will be always going to be front and center for a lot of organizations when looking to build the best user experience for end customers, the best experience for advisors, the best workflow integration between the different organizations that's required to serve the customer, be it accessing an ETF or a portfolio or mutual funds or an insurance, whatever that might be. So the front end game is always going to be there. In terms of core architecture, that will be the second, I would say, investment that we are putting a lot of efforts in, is to relook, because the engine room has been, well, first of all, Saxo being digital first for 27-year history that we have, also meant that there are a lot of systems that have been in place for 27 years. But looking at the core architecture and how do we make it more efficient, and more prepared for the new decade, is where we're going to invest a lot of efforts in and a lot of the technology spent into, particularly around asset classes that may be traditionally a little bit more, you could say, clunky or workflow-wise not as efficient, such as mutual funds, wherein the more liquid ones like ETFs, stocks, Forex, they're all very high level of throughput, but bringing along bonds and mutual funds that are, in terms of the trading aspects of it, is a little bit more.
Ivan, I'll just cut you off there.
Yeah, more efficient and fast. That's where we're looking into.
So Suramya, with the last question now, what would be the tip for fintechs from EU and the Nordics wanting to enter the Asian markets?
So, look, we've had discussions with some very, very interesting European and Nordic fintechs in the past. And in the recent times, we've also seen large European fintechs and banks start getting interested in this market. I think obviously one of the things that was mentioned earlier about the fact that Asia is a very large, complex set of countries. So it would be useful to have local partners, start small, get the context. I think, at least in my limited experience, the Nordic European fintechs that we talk to have very strong technological backbones, very innovative product ideas. But overlaying the local context, and as we all know, Indonesia is very different from Malaysia, is very different from India. So that aspect would be critical, where maybe local partners could support them.
Cool. Cool. So we'll just probably take a question or two, if there are any. I mean, we are on time.
Yep.
Any questions from the audience?
No.
I'm looking at the meeting chat.
Yeah, there's nothing showing up. So I'm presuming we don't have any questions to take live. So thank you for being wonderful panelists. And with that, we'll kind of close this session. Thank you, everyone.
Yeah. Thanks, Ajay. Thanks, Stephanie. Thank you.